Here.
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 Here. Sorry for your pledge. Mr. Shelton has the flag over there. Thank you, Mr. Shelton. All kinds of different reasons. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First thing, we have a citizen's time to speak. Any citizens here that would like to say anything? Any procedures here? Gus? Okay, I'll take that as a no. And there were no submissions to the citizen's time to speak email. So we'll go right to Annie in the finance report.
Okay. Please let me know when you can't hear me, but I think it's okay. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about finance in terms of our cash flow or to date, give an update on operations, and some updates on our personnel. First, we're going to talk a little bit about our property taxes, which we've been kind of following for the last couple months. In terms of our 2019 property taxes due in 2020, as we discussed at the last meeting, there was a resolution that was passed by the Assembly Board on September 10th, which waived the late fees and interest on a second installment that was typically due in September, and extended it for 90 days to the 3 days now in December. Typically, we receive our last distribution in November annually. They've adjusted the schedule so that we're expecting our last distribution to come in February. So this will impact our cash flow. However, given the current amount of collected, we're still pretty hopeful that it won't impact on the first AWs in terms of the timeline and the value that we need for them.
Annie, you said we're pretty hopeful for what?
That the impact of when we receive the final tax distribution that could be pushed to February, it will not impact the amount or the timeline for tax anticipation warrants.
We're thinking if we get all that still outstanding.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Also, what we've seen so far is our September total is coming short, but we did receive a payment on October 2nd in the amount of $2.5 million. Right now, total remaining to be collected on the 2019 budget is $929,000, of which we budgeted 3 of that remaining 4%. So if you remember, we under budgeted the levy by 1%. So if you took away about $230,000, about $700,000 is what we have outstanding on our actual budget. So we'll continue to track this and I'll have more information for you at the next meeting. Our next distribution is due this Friday. Updates on our quarter to date starting for Ed Fund. You'll notice that our property taxes as discussed are coming in a little under budget in comparison to the prior year. CPR taxes allocated only to our Ed Fund. They do also be allocated to our IR fund, so although it looks higher, here is about tracking where it normally should. In terms of our state funding, general state aid is exactly where it was last year because they're paying their 2 payments to schedule. And state grants, typically, the good news with the state grants is typically you know that our state grants are about a quarter behind for our quarterly mandated credit workload. They were actually in by the end of August, so almost a full month before we typically see those coming in for the prior quarter. So although they're still late, they're only 2 months late instead of 3 months that we normally see. In terms of everything else, I just want to mention a little bit. Obviously, our fees, you can see that those are tracking in pretty low, less than half of what we typically have at this point. And I think a lot of it has to do with our delay in determining whether or not we're going to reduce some of those for the year. So we're hoping to see those pick up. Interest, not too hopeful there. We did talk with our PMA, which we are investing through, and they do not have any hope in the municipal law at this time to see any turnaround with that. So that's one area that we see invested in this year. Okay. In terms of expenditures, salaries, you'll see that we're actually tracking ahead of where we were last year. Reason for that is, if you recall, staff in, but we don't anticipate spending as much as we have in past years, just due to the need of supplies that we have in some of the food service items and other things in that line item. Moving on to the operations and maintenance fund, pretty similar story in terms of our revenue, about 40% year-to-date on our property taxes. You'll see here we have a state grant that shows outstanding for $50,000, but that's actually something we received over the summer, so we received it prior to the fiscal year. So when our audit is all wrapped up, it shows that as our, it just is a placeholder basically for them for the audit purposes. That money is actually to go towards our roof project, which we're hopeful that will be complete by the end of this fiscal year. The $6,500 in miscellaneous, that is for the payment for the doctor property. In terms of expenditures, our salaries are tracking a little under, as well as our employee benefits, and that has to do with our reduction in those staff positions. Purchase services, again, pretty close to where we've been previously, but we're really trying to take some things up, as well as our supply list, only about 17% there. You'll see some obviously additions to that as we're trying to put some step in, and if you can go around the building, you'll see that we've added a lot of things in terms of barricades, plexiglass, and those things to make sure that there's safety for the students. And so, lastly, just want to talk a little bit about transportation. Again, tracking pretty much the same in terms of our revenue. You'll notice at the bottom here, salaries year-to-date is only at $42,000. Last year, this time we were at over $100,000, and obviously since we're not funding buses in the same capacity, we are not spending those salaries or those benefits. Actually, the benefits applies to our year-round staff, so those are actual for people who are from working. But in terms of salaries, we're adding about 6.46% of our budget. That holds true for our purchase services as well as our supplies. You can see the builders having to those as well. Any questions about that?
Sorry, I know we're real close.
That's okay.
Say it louder so everybody else can hear. Do we run any risk, knowing last year there were some banks that kind of got out of the TAWS market? Do we run any risk of that coming up for this upcoming school year?
Such that we didn't have anyone to bid on us?
Yeah.
So, obviously there's that potential. The last 2 years of the same question, last year wasn't the year that we had the most issues. The prior year was, so there's some more things more, we ended up getting 1 or 2 more bids than we had the prior year. We didn't have as much struggle last year. The good news is we do always have in our back pocket, so to speak, that line of credit that we could look into, which is something that we would kind of rely on. We do anticipate, unless of course the property taxes really don't come in, we do anticipate that we'll be borrowing less than this year. So we're closer to the $1 or $2 million, which is more like a line of credit than it would be for necessarily when we do the same thing.
The four last year, right?
3.
3.
Mhm.
We keep saying 4.
I know, it is, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so just a bit on operations. For food service, the Senate did pass a Continuing Appropriations Act, which extended USDA's authority to issue and extend the nationwide child nutrition waivers through all of next year, or through and into next year. We're not sure what September 20th means. Ultimately, the way that the National School Lunch Program works is it actually runs through September. Why the 20th? We're still not 100% certain on. However, we do know that it extends at least for the whole entire year. We don't have to wonder about that. If that money's going to get cut out like we talked about last meeting. Also, for food service, they've been working on our hybrid plan. We're continuing to work on scheduling to accommodate all of the different models. New surveys are coming out of that, and we're just going to test to get another one that opens again tomorrow for the next week, and then there'll be a new survey once we go out everybody into full hybrid or remote. And those will be completed weekly for students who want to pick up or take a role with them as we go home from school. In terms of the transition of our student population who are taking the free lunches at this time, on average, there are about 150 to 160 students who are participating during the full remote model. And just kind of cross-referencing those specific students, there's only about 15 that will remain in the full remote after transition, which will make it a lot simpler for our food service to keep up with that. So we don't anticipate actually doing crazy commands to staffing for now. And those full remote students will be cut out in elementary and junior high divisions still, so it'll be the same hours the following next. our products, so we use the Santa and then the lemon pot is actually a soap on top of, the disinfectant. So we use both of those to clean the high touch surfaces, including all of the sweet dust on those Wednesdays. I'm not going to go with the videos for I had it in my head. Volatile organic something. Anyway, thank you. And basically, that is got a paper, so you can use multiple in session as well. Thank you. Following up, or continuing on to transportation, all the bus routes have been changed from this year, so they don't look the same. Tom and his staff as well as Sandy in the office took a lot of time this summer just looking at the original locations of the buses and where they can go. Kind of went back to an old formula because last year got a little bit mixed up. And what they decided to do was load the buses at their maximum capacity of 44 students, taking all students in the district into account. So basically, now they've taken it so the maximum load is 44. What that means is they did two seat statements, and the remaining 11 seats on each side would be able to hold 2 kids, so 44 kids total. They then take that and divide it into a modified AV schedule based on what the AV hybrid is. Then it was reduced by about 15% for people who just aren't going to ride the bus at all after that. And he said that the most dramatic decrease was in the pre-K number calculations we expected. And so once we're in that hybrid AV model, your buses will have between no more than 10 to maximum 20 kids per bus. Typically, it's in class, if you look at our regular route approximate ridership, 190 students divided by 7 routes, and then again divided by 2, you're at 10 to 15 as opposed to that 20 marker. Most of these are well into that 20 marker. The reason that they have to give a little bit of concession to that is some of those other routes are longer, so some of them need to be a little smaller, where some of them that are more of a crowded area, they want to get the kids there and get them out as soon as possible instead of having to put them on the bus. Cool thing that we did also is the way that they'll be loading the buses is also a hybrid model. So they'll load the back, the front, the middle. So they'll cut it in a third, and then they'll cut that in half again. So they'll go from a third to a sixth, or whatever breakdown that is. So that basically they're keeping the students as safe as possible throughout the duration of the trip, so that kids are in contact with or the least frequency of along the trip. Does that make sense? So instead of loading them all to the back and stacking them up, one to the back, one to the front, one to the middle, and to the back again. So kind of in that rotation to keep the kids safe. So ultimately, common staff are pretty hopeful about that. They've also, of course, that our science meetings are still working through things as students are changing hybrid remote and stuff. But the staff is really excited about nervous of course, but they're in it already. Anyone talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, just quick, just a couple of other points for you. We'll get some information out in the next couple of weeks in regards to parent-teacher conferences. But after talking with the county and the health department as well, they're recommending that we, needless to say, we'll do those via Zoom or Google Meet. So information will be coming out on that in the next couple of weeks, but I just want to kind of give you a heads up beforehand. Also, just wanted to let you know that we ended up having 327 students that selected the full remote. It comes out to be about 19.5% of our students selected the full remote. Everybody else was hybrid. We tried to compare it to the summer data in that slide, but it's not an accurate depiction because there were so many people that were left that were still not registered at the time that we closed that and got the full remote. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison. But as of October 7th, and we didn't have any, check this afternoon, we did not have any other changes. So we're at 327 students that are full remote.
Moving on to just a few updates about personnel. We did have some vacancies as a result of reductions, retirements, and resignations. We were working through that hiring process. We had 4 custodial vacancies. We hired We try to detail that out for our staff. Currently, only one staff is taking advantage of that, which we are all aware of. What it amounts to is they are eligible to receive 2/3 of their total pay for up to $200 a day to be reimbursed by the federal government to stay home care for their children. So it would not be out of our funding. We do not pay into TRS during that time, so one deterrent if there is one. The district will not allow any use of other time, personal or sick to make up the other 1/3. And for maximum total users currently only goes to December 31st. We anticipate that it will likely get extended like a lot of the other programs, but just to make you guys aware of it. There's been questions about whether intermittent absences will be allowed. We as a district do not have to allow it. So I know we'll do our best to work with our staff, but for our students' well-being as well as our staff's well-being, obviously we'll take that into consideration for any discussions of that. Lastly, I just want to mention, we quickly got some turnaround due to some negotiations or agreements that we're having with our JSSO, Johnson Support Staff Organization. They wanted us to put together some training before they came into the building, and we weren't able to do that. We worked with our district nurses to put together training and offer 3 sessions. And the goal was really to provide information and clarification about knowing symptoms, any risks that they have, protocols, different PPE that's available to them, how they take PPE off and how they put it on appropriately, and just basically working with our students to make sure that they feel safe as well as they feel that they're providing a safe environment for our students. So that went over well. That's all I have.
Questions for Annie? Annie?
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for my board members, though. It is financially related, and I just want to see where you guys are at on this. I guess I'm thinking of, here, I'll go this way. I'm sure you've seen there's been a couple hurricanes lately. In fact, they tied the record for most hurricanes with Delta. And I have this feeling that there's a financial hurricane coming. You guys have heard me express this before. But I don't feel like there's any closure. Here are my concerns. We get about $4.5 million from the state each year. And the state doesn't have money pouring in. We could potentially lose $1 million in property taxes, potentially. I'm not discounting what you say, potential is there. We borrowed last year $3 million in April. The year before that, it was $4 million in March. So in the last 4 years, we borrowed $1 million less a month later, which is good. We've been making progress. But then I'm looking through the history of our TAWs. I think you said it's because the state didn't pay us a categorical in 2012. Maybe not. But 2012, we borrowed $3.9 million in March. And we borrowed $5.7 million in December. We borrowed $9.6 million that year. That probably almost be half of our budget that year for TAWs. I say all that is, do we think there's value? And if I'm alone, I'm alone. But do we think there's value in asking Dan and Annie to really look at what we're doing this year in preparation for the metaphorical financial hurricane? Any way we can tighten the belt this year in preparation for lost revenue, we're going to lose revenue from the state next year. And if we don't, that's not the worst thing. If we can find some efficiencies, or if there's some cuts we can make, or if there's some non-essential purchases that we don't need to make. If I'm alone in these fears, and I'm alone, they'll still rest with me, but I don't think we're doing our due diligence if we don't look at this and get prepared for what may happen. Look at Chicago. Mayor Lightfoot said it isn't going to be a bad year budget-wise. It's going to be fine. And yes, she said that. I think it was the first month of COVID. And now they're at an $800 million shortfall. We're anticipating a $1.2 billion shortfall next year. It's $2 billion. We're not talking that number for us. But $1 million is a lot of money for us. And we just borrowed $3 million in April. So I just want to see, I want to know like where you guys are at this. And if I'm alone, I'll shut my mouth. But any thoughts on this? Or
So your idea is that we could easily be back to $7.5 or $8 million of TAWs borrowed if we went into the hole.
I'm not saying a number, I'm just saying, I'm worried we're gonna be borrowing even more. And all this
Right.
progress we've been making year after year, suddenly we're going backwards. Like I said, we've been borrowing $1 million less, a month later, each year, that's great. It's good, and we haven't cut programs, you know, we've done a very good job. Well, these guys have, you know, we're just
Sure.
saying, you guys do it, and then
Yeah.
here's your marching order, so. But we've given them that expectation, and that's what I respect about Andy and Dan, you know, they follow through, and they listen to us, and they give us options, and they inform us. But I don't wanna go into this blind thinking everything's gonna be great, because I just don't think it's going to. So, I don't know if I wanna put a number on it, Jerry, but
I think before you put it on, we would be happy to be able to put together some different scenarios about what potentially could be happening in different, I don't want to call it doomsday, but I want to use that term, maybe hurricane might be a good choice. About some different scenarios that potentially could be out there that school districts could be facing, and then that would be able to put more of a specific number on it versus, I'd be concerned about just tossing some numbers out, but, you know, then we could bring some different scenarios to the board to go, okay, if this would happen, here's the result, that type of thing, to be able to give you some specifics with that, if that would be helpful.
it would be, but I don't know if I'm asking for scenarios. I think we're witnessing one unfold before our eyes. I don't see the state saying, we've got everything we've always had for you.
No, what I'm saying, is- all I'm saying,
I want, if we could find ways to save money for this year, you know, let's squirrel things away, because we may need it next year.
This scenario, though, is significantly different than what happened leading up to the 08 to 09 crisis, right?
right,
We had families leaving, we had less reimbursement that way. This where we wouldn't have, we're not seeing reductions. Yes, we've had that steady decline, but not like what we saw leading up to that time, right? So understanding that, you know, teacher salaries are, you know, we're a consulting firm. You know, if we're not seeing reduced class sizes, I guess I'm just asking, where would you go to find that money?
That's what, I don't know, that's,
Yeah.
you know, are there things that we plan to purchase that we really don't need to purchase? I don't even know what that would add up to be. Are there certain positions that, you know, maybe we don't need to hire this one just right now? Maybe we can get by with 2 people doing this instead of 3, though 3 would be much, much better. Jim, you had something?
Yeah, I was gonna kind of echo what Dan said, and what you said as well, though. I think we need to start where Dan is suggesting, because they can bring ideas on how to cut, but whether if we're gonna cut 100,000, we're gonna cut 500,000, we don't know what that number is going to do to impact, you know, in a potential, maybe like a likely scenario. So if they build us projections based on your, you know, hurricane, you know, doomsday kind of forecast, we could say if we fall below this type of revenue coming in, or this type of revenue, here are some of the numbers that will likely be short. I mean, let's call it what it is. We all know every year we're borrowing millions of dollars to keep the district afloat. However, we need to build that into the possible equation too. So if they build the doomsday, horrible term. If they build the scenarios for us to look at, then we can give them the task of saying, now where can we nickel and dime to build up to those shortfalls?
And if I could clarify it just a little bit, I don't, like this school year, this budgetary year ship has sailed. You know, there's, 95% of the costs are fixed, is that a safe thing to say? So, I know it's just a little bit here and there. But my point is, any way we can save $1 this year is gonna help us next year. I think what you guys are throwing, that's a next year budget we're building that too.
I see the difference between.
Sure, okay, yeah.
So,
The only thing I'd like to point out too, is I think it's a good idea, but I don't want to give anyone out there, you know, false impression that we're not always doing that day to day, because I think looking at the budgets year after year, I think we do run a pretty lean ship as it is, and I would not want anyone to have that notion that we're not constantly looking for opportunities to, you know, save money here and there.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's what I was gonna
And I wasn't intending to do that.
Yeah,
That's why I said, I don't know how much we can actually
It's gonna-
trim away this year.
It's gonna be tough to scrounge up anything with how tight we've been for a number of years. And like I said, let's not kid ourselves, we're borrowing millions of dollars to keep us in that kind of tight ship as it is. So where we can go, I mean, we have to be creative, we gotta be able to forecast it. I think we all know what's gonna come.
See what we can do. Anything else anyone wants to say? Or Val, or?
I think it's a good idea to educate ourselves, just to see what's coming. That's such a positive thing for us. Maybe it isn't. But maybe it is.
All right, well, thank you for hearing me out, folks. I appreciate that. Sorry to steal your intro.
I got a good one. We are all about the fun stuff. So we started bringing our children back. This is Mr. Long Early Childhood Classroom. So this is our 3 to 5-year-old kids. Remember, this is all special education students, developmentally delayed in more than one area. They were super excited, both kids and the staff. The staff were waiting outside the door for the buses to arrive. And when I say they could not contain themselves, I did not ask any of them to come, but they were all there because they were that excited for the kids to come back. It was all hands on deck, getting them out of the cars, getting them out of the buses, taking temperatures without being asked any of this. These 2 little boys, or 3 actually, just started, just moved into the district. We had a meeting the day before. This is our first day in our district. And again, you can see our OT and our PT helping him with his walking. So we did have the wheelchair bus. We had the chair to help him get from the bus down to ground level. Mom supplied us with his walker. The minute we got him into his walker, he took off with a smile on his face. He could not wait to get to the building. It was adorable. And then that's his twin brother with his still on there getting off the bus. Just some pictures inside the classroom there. She does have her classroom set up in stations. So we have 2 sets of twins in this classroom, believe it or not, and then a singleton. So the 2 sets of twins kind of have a bigger area, and they actually can be together in their area since they're the same family. And then the singleton has this kind of old area in the back. So each station has the same things in it for them to play with. And after a certain amount of time, things get washed and switched around. So everybody kind of stays in their station. They're not kind of intermingling throughout the classroom to kind of keep social distancing. So they do attend school 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. They are dropped off at 9, they're picked up at 11:05. And we're continuing with that. And we have our first ELS classroom. This is Ms. Rel. She's a new teacher to the district. This has 5 kids in the classroom as well. And you can see kind of again, all hands on deck. When they were getting off the bus, we had helpers. The most hysterical part of my day was this hand sanitizer because they were too quick or they were too low and they didn't register for their hands. So we probably stood there for a good minute just trying to get them to figure out how to do a hand sanitizer machine when they entered the building. I don't know if you can see, but on the floor by the gym, we had purchased jump ropes, 7-foot jump ropes. And we connected them together so that every 7 feet you had a set of handles. And we thought this was perfect because it's all we're going to teach them to kind of walk through the hallways, social distancing. That was a miserable fail. They all had their hands on the rope and just kind of walking right up to one another. So yeah, still in training on the whole rope thing. And then somehow or other, it was around someone's feet. We had stopped the line and redo all that. So we're still working on that one. Just to kind of teach them how to walk through the hallways. Ms. Rel has everything color-coded in her classroom. So she has 3 drawer bins for each student. You can see little boy up in the front has a green bin. He's got green tape around his area. He's got a green folder. Green everything is his color. And so they kind of know where they're at, what's their stuff. So again, try to keep the social distancing and keep the too much turnover between items, so everybody has their own bins and things like that. She also attends 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. We started them 9 to 3, but now that kids are coming back in the building and transportation will be changing, Their hours will now go 9 to 12:45, and will include lunch in their day, starting Thursday. This is our second ops classroom over there. Ms. Oshbacher switched down, remember, to the number of students we had this year. Also 5 kids in the class. These kids were sitting on the floor on their marks because we at that point we knew that the room wasn't really working for us. There's a picture of adaptive PE, and there's a staff in there to assist our teacher. Trying to figure out the desk thing. You'll see 2 desks are kind of facing each other. So that allows for social distancing when the teaching assistant or the teacher is helping a child. We go face to face this way rather than being next to them. They're on back order, but you'll see in a minute. We do have clear dividers for that as well. There's some clear dividers for that as well. The rest are back. And then I asked Ms. Oshbacher, she was beaming with pride with this thank you letter from a parent on the first day that we brought the kids back. It was a beautiful letter written by a parent of the district who still aged me, but I actually taught the father. I've done that second round of students. I'm not old enough for this. But just saying how amazing she's been, how her daughter was thrilled to be coming back into school, and what a great job they did on the remote part of it as well. So it was a very nice school letter from her parent. Junior high and high school, not as cutesy, those are great, but still. They are 2 different hours, so they all are starting on their own school hours. So this opponent's classroom starts at 8:10 and moves going 3 hours to 11:10. Again, with busing, we're going to switch that over to noon. They will not have lunch. That is the 6th grade lunch hour starts at noon. So those 3 will be going home at that point right now. This Vanessa's class starts at 7:30, goes till 10:30. Right now there's 2 children in her class, 1 remote. This opponent says all 3 of her kids. This way we're not changing Miss Vanessa's hours. She's staying at the 3 hours because the next in her schedule would be a study hall and lunch. We really didn't think that was going to be conducive to keeping kids in, so we could go back to the remote setting in the afternoon instead. Staff help out. Rachel from the athletic office helps us in the morning. We're still looking for some teaching assistants. We've had a number of interviews and our last one tomorrow. So hopefully we'll have our positions filled soon. Again, both these classrooms attend Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Just started on October 1st. We brought 5 students back. These students have the most resource support during their day, not just 1 or 2 of their classes. Mrs. Mass has this classroom. We're actually adding another student shortly. Again, all hands out on deck. The office staff was out there. We do believe that was Bridget in our dog costume there. Teaching the kids to elbow and high five. Some of them just looked at her like, kids came off the bus, ran to staff members, second. They were just so excited to be back at school. The picture of Miss Mass's classroom, again, socially distanced. We took out all the other stuff. Dustin's farm in the corner there. These students, on Thursday, when 1 through 5 comes back, these students will transition to 4 full days a week, and then Wednesdays will be remote for them. In doing that, we do have to check with the principals, make sure our numbers are correct. So once we were able to get our full remote numbers and classrooms and stuff, we did switch their homeroom class because Ms. Stark's classroom had the lowest number of in-person students, so it was easier for us to bring them in 4 days a week that way. That's probably the biggest thing to kind of keep in mind when you try to add some days is making sure that the classrooms that you're using have enough space. High school started last week. We brought 10 students back. We are now up to 12. They do come on their hybrid schedule, so if they are a Monday, Thursday child, those are the 2 days they come. If they're a Tuesday, Friday child, that's the days they come. We do have 2 students that come 4 days to make sure that we're giving them as much support and to be successful as possible. I did ask all my special education teachers if they are willing to teach the kids when they're in the building. They all said yes. We did reach out to the gen ed teachers. If they're in the building, they have the opportunity to take the kids with them. If if they're not in the building, these kids sit with Mr. Younglove and just learn remotely until the teacher is able to see them with them. Related services get provided this way in person a little bit earlier. Anna and our lunch ladies do deliver hot lunches to our students up here. And transportation's been great because they keep throwing them like, hey, how about this student? Can you get them on Thursday? How about this student? Give me another one. So they've been working great with us. A lot of communication, a lot of emails. Some of our PPE is spoken to all of our staff that we brought kids back in early to make sure that they've been comfortable with all of this. They've been offered the N95, the medical fitting. They do all have face shields as well. Some of our students, most of our students are wearing their face masks. Some of them do pull down if it's very tight some days. So we have purchased hats. We've given them face shields. This is a picture of the desk divider. So they do have, some of them do have that on their desk. We're still waiting for more to come in. And then the full gown PPE. Our nurses wear that, and our pre-K staff will wear that if they're changing diapers. We did reach out in constant communication with the health department, and that was what they recommended, was the full gown with the face mask and the shield. For those who were if they change diapers. Hybrid or remote? This was a difficult one. Thanks to Coop for pulling numbers for me. I hope I counted them correctly. Out of special education students only, 75 at Greenwood, 49 at Jazz, 62 at the junior high school, 73 at the high school. Going from were you remote versus were you hybrid, we had 16 changes at Greenwood, whether they went one way or the other. 7 changes at Jazz, 7 at the junior high, 14 at the high school. So our numbers sit at 47 are hybrid, 14 remote, 14 are what we call full-time. So 4 days a week or 5 days a week, whatever. And then so on and so forth there. So because of those changes, our related service staff are changing their schedule. So if the child was remote, we were all remote, and now we're going to get to hybrid, our related services, so our speech or OT, PTs, social workers, they want to see the child when they are in person. So they are now looking at, are you a Monday, Thursday child, are you a Tuesday, Friday child? When can I get to you in person? And then when can we do all the remote kids and things like that? So they're all in flux with making new schedules because they do want that face-to-face. They're updating remote learning plans as well. So if they are now in person and able to do more minutes that way, less minutes remote, they're updating all of that with the parents. Again, communicating with our building principals, food service, transportation, making sure all these changes that we're making everybody is aware of. Moving forward, what we're going to be doing next, identifying the students that are struggling academically. We understand remote's not ideal for everybody. It is for some, believe it or not. Some of our students who really come to school and struggle with anxiety in school, they're actually doing very well remotely because some of that stress is taken off of them. And they're really able to focus on the teacher staying and doing their work without the extraneous distractions of if somebody's watching them or the timing issues, who's turning their paper first and things like that. Some are doing well, but those that are struggling, that's what we want to take our next look at. With our hybrid time schedule, we do have time after school. That staff is still in our building, maybe not students, but maybe so. That's the time that we're going to take a look at first. Wednesday support groups with teachers and teacher assistants. If it's more of a remote day for kids, is there a time that we can get them, whether in the building or remotely? How can we do that? And then lastly, looking at that 4-day. Can we bring them in for 4 days with, again, the social distancing requirements and monitoring the numbers in the individual classes is what we're up against. We're able to get 15 kids in and 13 are in there, at least only 2 spaces in that one classroom. We start looking at junior high and high school schedules, a little bit more difficult than the 1 through 5 grades. Social workers have been busy. Lots of parent phone calls. They're kind of concerned as well as the kids are concerned. So answering a lot of those fears about how do you come back in person, what's it going to look like, what can we do to kind of keep you safe and calm. Some informal support to kids. With the COVID related, if there have been people who have sick or have died, kind of reaching out to them, supporting the parents and the kids. Lots of behaviors at home, lots of the, I'm not showing my cameras on, I don't like how, appearing on camera, film, things like that, so kind of dealing with some of that stuff. Some of the, not turning the work in, getting them back on track academically. We do have some SEL videos that go out on social media on a weekly basis. They do create monthly newsletters as well that get out by the building principals or out again on social media. They do join the Zoom sessions with kids and teachers. And then they have been instrumental in when I bring my kids back, as well as some of the other kids. Ms. Beth was walking one child around that has not come back, but will be back on Thursday, walking her around to make sure she's comfortable and understanding, the one-ways and things like that in the hallways. So this is also in addition to their IEP service minutes, the IEP meetings we're doing, all their evaluations as well. That's just some of the nice comments from parents for kind of bringing their kids back. They're excited. The kids are excited. The staff are getting there. So it's kind of fun to see. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
It was nice to see.
Yes.
I figured you'd like those pictures. It was great.
I like that the one class has 2 sets of twins and just 1 kid. Usually the twins would be the unusual ones.
Right.
I don't have a
Especially when
twin.
they were long. We put a staff member.
Look at that single.
Yeah.
We want it, and that's not, sorry.
Just reminded of the Brady Bunch episode when he was at the trial and he dropped the briefcase and the guy had the neck brace and he was faking. Look real quick. What was that noise? Aha. Good work. I don't know if it's good. No, I hated that shit. I was like forced to watch it most of the time because of my sisters. I want to watch Gilbert Cyrus.
Oh, there
In the 80s.
Wow.
Alright, so that's some, good stuff for you tonight. There's some information regarding the higher learning at each building. I'm gonna do a quick research summary of some of the stuff that's been done on the COVID-19 learning gaps. It's just the information that's pretty much guiding most of the districts right now. So just wanted to kind of give you guys an overview of that. And then as requested at the last meeting, our call to the keep it together. And a little potpourri section. I don't know if any money will be involved, but you guys get this ahead of time so you already know what it's starting. First of all, just a quick overview of the hybrid learning that's going on in these buildings. So first I did Ringwood and Johnsburg Elementary. With hybrid instruction, teachers will be using video conferencing software such as Zoom or Google Meet to deliver instruction remotely and in conjunction with your in-person students. So they're going to have live lessons spaced around the day with breaks for students as needed. How those lessons are going to be structured obviously is up to the subject and the teacher. And again, as you know, families can choose to have 100% remote instruction. And in first grade only, we have a dedicated remote learning teacher. Again, instructional planning is ongoing for hybrid. Just having been in the classroom for 17 years myself, I keep trying to imagine how would I manage this? how would I do this? And I think we have to give teachers a little grace and a little understanding and going, yeah, that planning is going to be ongoing. What they start with might not be what they end with. So just as they learn as they go along, I just know that would be my experience. Going, I'd start one way and want to switch to something new.
Could I ask one question about, is the first grade teacher who's doing the remote learning, is she servicing only first grade?
Yes.
Yes, only first grade remote students. Yep.
Okay, and in our 20%, do we have like a group that's higher, like more first grade remote, or?
The younger grades are from anywhere from pre-K to right around third grade. It's about 22%.
Okay.
And then the number slowly declines. There's one bubble year, I think it's sixth grade, no, it's seventh grade is a little like 26%,
Okay.
but everything else is lower. Yeah, the younger grades in particular.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I just put a screenshot in to show you, this is like a third grade typical schedule, and this was the information that was sent out to parents and in your packet. Just specials will be held at Ringwood and Jess, just at Ringwood are going to be asynchronous. And again, all this information is in your board packet for more information. Down for junior high and high school, again, there will be, currently most teachers plan to provide synchronous instruction daily for in-person and remote. Again, managing both groups at the same time. Same thing, instructional planning is ongoing. Still trying to plan and figure out how to manage those two groups. But for remote learning, teachers can use a combination of live and asynchronous for those families that choose 100% remote. Again, there's lots of different, for remote learning, there's a lot more research and a lot more instructional models out there. So it depends on the teacher and what they need to do. All right, so second section, I don't mean, please don't take it like I'm trying to teach you. I'm not. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction to the summary on what's going on with our learning gaps, because as you see from the data, if you've already taken a peek, we have some. And most of what we're seeing is in line with what the research said this summer. A lot of the stuff that came out this summer, I think there was one that came out in August. A lot of stuff is coming out to prepare us, and that's when I was reading it. A lot of it was actually mentioned by ISB as well in all their documentation. So the first thing that came out, this was a huge buzz, and I think it was like early summer, is that math took the summer slide research information that we already have on grades 3 through 8, and they extrapolated that with their data to project the amount of learning loss just from the spring of 2020. So they had two things. If you look at the graph on the next page, or the next slide, you have the slowdown, which is the dotted line. They're like, well, it could slow down. In other words, they stopped learning, they could maintain. And if anyone's been in a classroom, they know, I was like, that's ridiculous, why would you do that? But they projected it. But then they said, here's the slide that we project from, I think they used March 15th as the cutoff date. And I'm like, that seems a little more typical. So when I look at this, I look at the slide, because I think that's a little more realistic. But they basically said, look, we're projecting about a 30% learning loss in reading compared to a typical year, and they're projecting about a 50% learning loss in mathematics. Now, I don't know our percentages. I haven't calculated them because I don't know what algorithms they use, but I can tell you that our results were typical for that in math across the board. Even for those grade levels that look like they did wonderful at KM1, I'm pretty sure that's not really the case. So yeah, this is math. You can see they did the most drop, and then this is reading. Still a drop, not a big thing. So there are other articles that I linked later for your reading pleasure, but I said I'll just provide a summary. What these articles said was, look, around closing the learning gaps, what we need is coherent, knowledge-rich curriculum. Coherent means everything's connected. It's connected within the grade level, and it's connected to the next grade level. So they're always building on the skills. The focus is on grade level priority standards, which you guys all know is be released, which was next. Assessments, we need assessments that inform teachers regarding differentiated instruction and learning. In other words, assessments that inform teachers about where the gaps are. Now, we have aims and we have math. Those are overview, general, here are big areas. Where the big, when I used to teach assessment for Aurora, the big magic bullet is reformatives. It's those daily classroom, the teachers are constantly checking, did they master it, what don't they know yet? That's really where you're getting to the specific skills. And where the math can only go down so far, the teachers need to take that and then drill down further. Instruction, this was surprising to me when I read this. They said, look, remediation doesn't work. Do not back up and try and teach them everything that they were supposed to learn. It's not going to work. Keep moving forward with your grade level content. Spiral back to the skills that they need to master the grade level content. But that's where the assessment piece is critical. They have to keep assessing what don't they know. They did see success with that post-Katrina, mainly at the high school. And then, obviously, I put this in, we're gonna really be identifying kids for MTSS services, especially for those with severe deficits, and we're gonna make sure that they get them. We're doing that right now, especially for them.
Terry, do they say that for math as well?
Yes.
They
When
do?
you mean the instruction? Yes. They actually said continue, but then you're going, okay, for this particular math skill, what don't they know, or what do they need to know to master it? And then assess that.
Are we addressing that at all?
For math or planning, too, yeah.
Planning to?
So, yeah, math is a tricky one. Post-Katrina, now you guys remember Katrina, that is a little different. Those kids were out, some of those kids were out for an entire year, and they came back with 2 years of learning loss. We were out with just a few months, and it's still gonna be a big gap. What they found in Katrina was that the learning loss couldn't be predicted by any of the normal factors that we could predict. They just constantly had to assess the kids. And that's what we're gonna be preaching, is you have to assess where the kids are at. Don't predict based on other factors. And often it took a lot of years of individual attention. What I'm gathering from this, again, this was a year of school loss for most kids. We didn't get a year loss, but still, this indicates that there might be a long-term need for some of these interventions that we're doing now. How long-term, I couldn't tell you, but long-term need. So what does all that mean for District 12? Well, I'm confident we have a core curriculum that is content and knowledge rich, that it is coherent, especially in ELA and especially in math. I did provide PD on our little choice menu about the priority standards, and I really emphasize in that it's not about this year what's coverable. It's about what's learnable, and you really have to assess what students need to learn. And again, at assessments, again, math and AIMS are big overarching assessments. They can only go down so far, then the classroom assessments need to take over and drill deep. It's not to say that, well, AIMS doesn't really. Math has some good reports that can help teachers drill down. I'd love to show them to you, but it always has kids' names on there, and I can't do that. But really it drills it down to not fine skills, but it drills it down to teachers to take it from there. And go, okay, here's a skill that I can recognize and assess this. Instruction, after successful return to hybrid learning, our long-term plans to close learning gaps will include methods for that differentiated instruction. That's where the planning piece comes, math and ELA. This gives me So having said that, I just wanted to use that to preface our achievement data. And the one thing the other thing I want to say to preface that is, when I looked at it, I just knew before we even looked at it, it was going to be all over the map. It was literally going to be all over the map, not really trending with what we've seen in the past. So, I wanted to point out that NWA did do some research in terms of remote testing. I do understand there were technical issues with remote testing, especially at the junior high and at Jets. However, they did research from the spring, because they had schools that did remote testing in the spring, and here's what they found, just kind of what we found. Students in general, I'm not saying some kids didn't click through the test, because that's what happens. In general, they didn't really rush through it. They actually took a longer amount of time, which that was surprising me when I was first looking at the data coming back from math. I'm looking at testing times for kids, and I'm like, these are so long, what are we doing? Well, it jives with what math found. The mode of assessment, in other words, in-person or remote, didn't really affect their achievement. In fact, the amount of time they took affected it more than whether or not they took it in-person or remote. The overall reliability test was pretty good across grade levels and subject areas. This is where we saw this too. The greatest variability was in K2. The remote K2 group had RIT scores, which is the heavy score of a math test, that were significantly higher than the in-person testers. And any of you have peeked ahead to our K1 data, it looks fantastic. I'm like, these guys are going to solve all the world's problems by 6th grade. Yeah, that's exactly what we found. So they found that too. And I just wanted to note what they noted in that 2-page overview, and this is something we plan on doing, is trying to help parents and support them. How much support should you give your child when you're doing this? So again, I know it's the best interest, they have the best interest at heart, but they found the same thing, K1 and K2. So I want to give some background on it, I'm not trying to excuse our data because there's a lot of different factors that go into it. But right before this happened, I mean, I literally remember face palming on a regular basis, like, math, what are you doing? They revised the norms, so now we have 2020 norms, which are actually slightly lower than the 2015. The K2 test had the difficulty of the items adjusted over the summer. And math does say, don't compare your fall results to any other K2 test behind it. So that's why I love to give comparisons, but I can't on that test, because it's not the same. And I just threw some graphs there. You can see the reason they did that was because usually students will take the K2 test, then they'll take the 2 through 5, which is what they take at 3rd grade. It doesn't read the test to them anymore, and the scores start to come in. We didn't give the language usage test this year just because we thought 2 tests was enough. So if you look at the data that's coming up next, this is the data I typically give you, which is the achievement. Because typically in the fall, we don't have 2 data points for growth, so all we can look at is achievement. So if you look at our achievement, it looks pretty typical, especially when you line it up to the norms. But I ran a growth report I normally don't run because it just tells me kids lost learning over the summer, which is something you already know. So the growth data tells a different story. So again, the norm is the purple bar on each one. This is by cohort grade level. The teal bar is our fall data. And if you look, we're, up against the norm, not doing so bad. Wow, look at those. Look at these guys. Same for reading. But there's something in math you can run that's a fall-to-fall growth. And normally, again, I don't run it because you get the summer slide in there. And I'm like, yeah, typically, you're going to see those scores go down. Well, I ran it this year thinking this is really going to better inform me as to how much loss we got. And that's what these charts are. I tend to look at this, but you can look at the percentiles too. This, if you're familiar with statistics at all, it's standard deviation. If you know nothing else, negative numbers are bad. Positive numbers are much better. You're familiar with the bell curve. You want to go to the right, you want to go to the left. So our 1st and 2nd grade, I said, is most likely anomalous data. It says they grew almost 2 standard deviations. So we're looking at that a little more closely. Typical growth, though, or the typical growth here, would be about a negative 0.5. So that's why I went, oh, for math, we're seeing this loss. Now for reading, we have some 1st, 2nd, 4th grade data we have to take a look at. For reading, though, there wasn't really a pattern that I saw in the past, but you'll see that we have negative numbers here. We still had some loss there. The nice thing about the reading data is that we have the Ames Web data to correlate alongside. So if you look at our K1 Ames Web, and I apologize for these teeny tiny numbers. Here's kindergarten. These are the tiers, if you look at MTSS, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Tier 1 is green, Tier 2 is yellow, Tier 3 is red. Tier 3, remember, is being where you want the most intensive interventions. You have 47 kindergartners right now according to Ames in the red. Our 1st grade is what we are really, really worried about. Really worried about. I just had a meeting Friday with the interventionists over at Ringwood. We're already planning to do these guys. 71. And then 2nd grade goes a little up. But these, you have to know this, the measures that are administrated at K1 are face-to-face. They're not through an app, they're not the kid just taking the test. It's the teacher and the student interacting. Because it's like letter naming fluency, letter sound words fluency, so they have the students to read something to the teacher. So this is really informative to go up. That kindergarten, 1st grade data, and math, probably not. Probably anomalous is the best way I our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade data is actually pretty typical. 4th grade, again, might be a little anomalous. Again, they take this through an app where the teacher can't communicate because the app locks down the computer. The one thing we noticed is we don't have any Ames Web math. Now again, we haven't got math in the past just because the measures used to be so bad. They didn't tell us anything. They just revised them. And we are going to get the Ames Web math for our students that are in intervention. So again, all the data from remote testing will be analyzed with a critical eye. I still believe it was necessary just to get that initial data. We're going to cross-reference as many as possible. Obviously, we have some learning gaps that we need to deal with, the concerning early literacy skills, the literacy skill deficits in K1 at this point. Our general areas of concern from these particular tests, math, when I went and looked at all the goal areas, operations and algebraic thinking at this time are the big one I see a tank in. Reading, we see some informational text deficiencies with fluency and those early reading skills. Any questions about the data before we go to Hopefully for 200?
I just had a question. Is high school doing the radiant learning?
We did not, because first of all, the radiant learning company would get back to me. And second of all, yeah, there was just so much going on, we just decided. And plus, it's an in-person test, we didn't know what was going on, so.
So, I just have a question then too. So we have the general areas of concern here. And I know, you know, the concept deficit information will come from teacher map reports. Has that been given to them yet? Or is that in the works?
Oh, the teachers have access to the map data the day after they take it. And so the teachers have access to that, and then the Ames web as well. They all have logins and they all access that information. So now, do we probably need to do more with how to read that information and translate it to classroom instruction?
That's my concern.
Yes.
Is that, I think it's great data. My concern and the disconnect for me is what these teachers are going to do with it.
Yes. You're absolutely right. And
But I
that's-
think it's important for the board to note right now, we're worried about figuring out how to teach hybrid first.
Yes.
And that's unfortunate, we're working on creating and teaching hybrid first.
Yeah, how do we manage that?
Right. How are we gonna manage that? That's the first step that we gotta get done, and then moving on. That's the challenge that the entire nation is facing right now, is that and then the learning loss combined. That's a real challenge that we're trying to deal with.
And the other thing, again, with that PD menu, that's on my list of things to do, is that could be something, because I wanted to do a lot of on-demand this year in their PLCs. They can watch that. How do I read this report? How do I translate this instruction? So it's coming, but yeah, we have coming back. No, you're right, that was a worry of mine too. Especially Ames Web Plus, it's a new system that teachers aren't used to having their own login.
I understand, you know, we have to figure out remote learning, but, and I'm sure this feeling is shared by you guys, and that's why I think it needs to be asked, but according to this data, we have 2/3 of the kids in first grade in the red zone.
Yep.
Like, that's deeply concerning. So let's say we get remote figured out, what are we gonna do about that?
So at the meeting.
How are you gonna approach that?
So at the meeting on Friday with the interventionists, they said, look, they don't know their letters, they don't know their letter sounds, they don't know that basic information. So we talked, I go, what do you need? Because I am in charge of the Title I funding. So I actually set aside money in that funding going, hey, I don't know what interventions we're gonna need, because I don't even know what the needs will be right now. But I set aside money to go, we're gonna purchase something or something for, you know, to help these kids. So they, at the meeting, said, hey, they don't know their letters, they don't know their letter sounds, we need a phonics intervention. So we just purchased a phonics intervention today to start with that. So we're starting at the ground zero with the reading, just phonics, what are their letters, what are their sounds. The interventionists are going to pull them. Now, they worked out their schedule, I think they.
You say they're going to pull them from,
Right, that they worked out the schedule today. They're trying to work around, like my title interventionists can't pull legally during reading for reading intervention. They can't legally pull during that, and I wouldn't let them anyway, because it's supposed to be above and beyond. But yeah, so they're
what
working
can
on the
they be
schedule.
pulled from?
Huh?
What can they be pulled from, specialists?
Yes.
And I know that isn't popular, but this is just me as a dad. I'm speaking me as a dad. But if my kid can't read in first grade, I don't want him going to PE and art. I want him to learn how to read. So is that something they could be pulled from?
Yes.
And I know it's not popular, but.
Chief, were you sitting in the office with Terry and I having this exact conversation
I
about?
did,
3 o'clock
I
this
worked in
afternoon?
I don't know if you guys were environments, but it's very high performing, very high performing all the time. And the reason is they heavily invest in their MTSS. They won't pull out of regular classroom instruction, they will pull specials as the first place they go. So this year, we have guaranteed flexibility from the specialist teachers that we were going to perform during the specials.
Good.
And I
This
said-
feels like an emergency to me.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it, and I'm about to tell them, it's probably not just for this year, it's probably gonna be for multiple years.
Would you ever consider having some of these children, because they're obviously not special ed students, but their needs are pretty severe. Would you consider having them stay longer? You know what I?
You know, and I did look at that because I was looking at, like, when I did the title money, I go, I could do an extended after-school program, I could pay people to do interventions afterward. That has been a plan, but as far as, like, we're gonna try this first, and then if they need that, yeah. So that was, what my initial thought was, they're gonna need after-school, before school.
These are the conversations that we're having. If you remember, right, when we talked about switching to hybrid, we talked about, okay, we gotta get going, and then we can see where are there opportunities to bring additional students in to be able to give additional support, right? So this is the conversation that we're having, to be able to see those different opportunities, to be able to help, to be able to say, okay, let's get these kids in for more than 2 days a week, let's see if we can get some kids in for more. And we gotta get rolling first, and be able to analyze what we can do, and
So this is that flexibility.
And this is the first step, we're getting the data back, and we're going, okay, they don't know the letters, they don't know the sounds, what's the first thing we do? Phonics. We get a phonics intervention program, which we do not have, so we're gonna buy that first. Then we're gonna see what are the continuing needs. But yeah, that was my first thought, was to do an after-school program.
Okay, thank you.
Everything, all the testing we results this year. I have some difficulty believing that that data is all.
And that's why we cross-reference with the
So,
India.
Have we given the support staff the ability to use more discretion as what the kids need? I don't think it's a family where the child was answering, the parent stepped into the room and noticed that the letters they were supposed to identify weren't actually coming on the screen, but the kid was just saying letters. So I suspect that happened more than once. So we've identified the huge group of kids, and I'm not saying that that's not what it's gonna end up at, but does the staff understand that they can make more decisions than what the map data says?
I would assume they would, but it would bear, we could reiterate that for certain. And also, we also did, again, we talked last time we couldn't use our normal leveling, but we are using the reading A to Z leveling. That confirmed a lot of the reading deficits too. A lot of our first graders are coming in at AA. Yeah, so that's what we have to do.
And is there any consideration, do we need a pre-test in person?
We did pull some kids in for that on special case-by-case basis. So with the fall data though, yeah, it's just gonna be, there's gonna be anomalous data no matter what we do.
Right.
Yeah, in the winter, we're trying to plan for as much in-person testing as possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And I should say, I also want the staff to have the discretion to really pick out the things that need the most help too. I don't mean
There's-
one way or the other.
And there's some like measures in the map system, like it'll tell the teacher when they're rapid guessing. It'll, you know, and it'll go, no, do that again. So there are some features in the map system where they're, you know, it tells them when they're taking.
Thank you.
Just Terry, real quick follow-up. Like what Dan was saying, I know we're trying to learn how to get back into the hybrid. But I mean, realistically, what type of time frame would you think would be realistic to come back at you to ask, you know, for like an update as to where we're at? What kind of interventions we put in place?
Can I think about that? So I need to think about what I would exactly need to do.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that answer,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that's,
me too.
Yeah, I like to plan first before I do anything. That's why this is the potpourri section, and it switches gears. Talk about, we have a course proposal for additional math. Kevin, do you want to?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward compared to some of the years when we've proposed classes. We have instead of a big menu, we've just got one. It's a required class for all schools in Illinois to provide. And the background on why it's being required is they're trying to create a pathway for students that might not be going to a four-year school, that are looking at an MCC as their first option. They've had throughout the state large numbers of students needing to take remedial classes when they get to the community college level, where they have to pay for non-credit bearing classes. And so, as a state, this is basically their course, if you will, is to make sure that schools require this for those students that are not going to a four-year school, that they know are going to two-year, because if they complete this course, then they are automatically granted into a credit-bearing course in MCC, regardless of what their test scores may be. There's a variety of benchmarks that they currently use, from standardized test scores to how they score the particular courses at the high school level. They have run into scenarios where when you take the entry-level exam for taking credit-bearing classes, if you haven't taken Algebra 1 in a few years, you have to go back and remember exactly all the details. That's been somewhat of an issue if you don't meet those benchmarks. So, sorry for the long diatribe there, but that's the reason why this is in place, and this is something that, again, that is required. And we're taking our advanced math stats class and tweaking the curriculum to meet the requirements for MCCNs.
So my correct statement, it's advanced math stats only, it'll be, I think, part of the, not I think, I know, part of the requirements for this is that it has to be 20% problem-based. So there's certain curricular requirements, and it has to meet MCC standards to be accepted, for the students to be accepted into those.
Right, so we're using that as kind of our baseline, and then we're taking some things out, adding some things, but that's going to be kind of our baseline foundation, if you will, for the class.
So advanced math stats, new and improved.
2.0.
And then just an informational item, our next remote learning planning day is going to be on November 4th, which is right before parent-teacher conferences. So there will be no official student attendance on that day. It was remote learning, I think it's a Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, remote learning day anyway, so. We're going to have that and then parent-teacher conferences on the 6th. Any other questions? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, other business. We have a Board of Ed meeting here on the 27th of this month, right here again, right here. And on the 10th of November, we have a Committee of the Whole, I'm assuming right here again?
Right here again?
So we're here until we're not here.
Correct.
Okay.
Basically until we see Governor Bricker we're gonna go to phase 5, we'll pretty much be here. We're glad for social distancing and better situation for everybody, so.
All right, well, so we'll make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry, hearing no policies in the near future.
Yeah,
Correct, right, everything is
we
Huh?
meet on the 24th of November.
Yeah, we're gonna meet, we're scheduled to meet on Tuesday, so.